know what happens when you record to the cloud.
So
it says I am screen sharing and I am recording. So currently it's recording what we got here.
Okay. So welcome to WordPress Pompey, based in Portsmouth in the UK on the 19th of August. So we're really delighted to have with us today, live from Germany, a member of the Pluginkollektiv, who will be talking about some of the plugins that are looked after by contributors to WordPress. And these wonderful contributors came together to support plugins that were very popular within the ecosystem and were no longer able to be taken care of by the people who created them. So we're very grateful that they have taken this job on. And in response to feedback that we've had, and we've talked about some of these plugins before, Bernhard is joining us today to actually tell us a bit more about how they work and give us a bit of a walkthrough. So to join our hands to say thank you to Bernhard Kau, who is going to be talking about the Pluginkollektiv and how he helps them in terms of deployment and some of the plugins that he looks after. So let me hand over to Bernhard.
Right, I've stopped sharing.
Screen now. Okay. Yeah, you should see a Chrome browser with pluginkollektiv.org.
Yes,
okay,
we do.
Great. Yeah, a bit of the backstory. So in Germany, we had a very active plugin developer. His name was Sergej Müller. And he alone developed 15 different plugins and maintained them for quite a while. And then because of different reasons, he dropped out of WordPress as a software in his daily work. And because he was not actively using the software anymore, he wanted to discontinue also maintaining all those plugins. But some of those plugins were really well known in the German community, especially because his very focus was on privacy. So all the plugins he wrote were totally taking privacy into consideration, and many of them specifically targeting towards privacy in many different ways. And when he announced his dropout of the WordPress community, abandoning all those plugins, there were some members of the German community who wanted to take them over. And here you see some of the contributors who took over. And primarily in the beginning, it was Stefanie, Ralf, Kaspar, and Thorsten. They were the first 4 contributors to take over maintaining those plugins. And the initial goal was just to maintain those plugins so they can still be used. There was no greater plan to add new functionalities. The major idea was just to maintain them so they will still work in the future. But because many of them were not plugin developers themselves, they were just enthusiastic about maintaining those plugins, they needed some help. So we had some new people getting on board, helping with very different aspects. Some of those dropped out after a few years after contributing. And so this is the current list of people maintaining the plugins in very different ways. We had some meetings in the back about how to maintain those plugins, because a single developer cannot maintain all those 15 plugins. We all don't know how Sergej was doing that all on his own, which was quite an intense job. I mean, I have some plugins my own in the plugin directory, and it's really a lot of work. If you react to support tickets, you have to check all your plugins with the newest WordPress versions once they come out. Maybe you have to patch some of them if things change. And this is really a lot of work. And we have different people with different special interests or special qualifications. Like Maya is an accessibility expert. She's really active in documenting plugins. Simon is somehow a bit more into communication and marketing. I'm mainly into maintaining one of the plugins, and I'm helping other developers if they have technical questions, code questions, as well as deployment questions. I've introduced some automated deployment process into the directory with the help of some GitHub Actions 10up was offering. So there are different people helping in different ways. And this way we could make sure that many of the plugins can still be used and some of them even get new features. So let's see the plugins we currently have, or maybe here in this view, you can see the different plugins we have and the number of installations they have. And you can probably see that Antispam Bee is by far the most used plugins with more than 500,000 installations so far. This is quite a lot. And this is also one of the reasons, like it was not that number back then. I think it was like 200,000 when Sergey dropped out. And we were seeing we cannot just abandon a plugin that has 200,000 users. Also, Statify is a very well-known plugin in the community, Cachify. So some of the plugins might get abandoned, like server state or the checksum verifier. There's also the idea to merge some of the plugins, like checksum verifier and antivirus are very similar in what they do. So they both check your theme or plugin files if they verify against the checksums that WordPress is providing. And so the functionality is quite similar. So there is the idea to just merge them together. There is one other plugin. It's still called Blacklist Updater. Some of you might have known that in WordPress 5.5, all these non-inclusive terms were dropped. So blacklist is now a block list. Unfortunately, you cannot rename the slug of a plugin. So we are still thinking about either just renaming the plugin, but keeping the slug, or just uploading the plugin again with a new name and helping users to migrate to the new one with the more inclusive name. But because we haven't figured out what to do, we still have it like this. But this was like one of the main things, because the name of a property in WordPress changes, there was a need to really change the code of the plugin, because otherwise it wouldn't work anymore. So some of the plugins really need maintenance with some of the updates. The Pluginkollektiv is just a group of people maintaining just the plugin Sergey Müller were giving us. We don't take any other plugins. So it's not that anyone can just abandon a plugin and ask us to like keep maintaining them. Fortunately, there are different organizations also taking over plugins if the developers don't want to maintain it anymore, or for other reasons cannot. Like a very valuable member of the WordPress community passed away, I think like 2 years ago, and all of his plugins were taken over by Automatic, where he was employed at the time. Some of them you might know, and they also had like millions of installations, and this was a plugin someone had to maintain. So it's not a new thing we have done, but at the time, because it was primarily a plugin used in the German community, this was long before GDPR, where like awareness of privacy was a bigger thing. We really wanted to keep those plugins working. So maybe I present to you some of the plugins that are well known and used. Let's see if I can move this around. Okay. Okay, let's start with Antispam Bee. This is by far the most used plugins. And Antispam Bee is quite simple. As the name says, it's against protection against spam, but specifically only common spam. So it's not a plugin you can use with Contact Form 7 or Gravity Forms or any other form plugin to block spam from contact formulas or things like that. it's just for comments. And here you can see my dashboard. So you can see the number of spam comments blocked by day. This is the chart you can find similarly in Akismet. Back then, the huge issue, and probably still up to today, is that Akismet is a service from Automatic, and they, in order to prevent spam, they have to send the data of a comment to a US-based server. And in terms of GDPR, this is not easy to do. So Antispam Bee works primarily just on your installation of WordPress. There are some settings you can activate to use some external services, but they are clearly labeled. So let's have a look at the settings you have. They are divided in three columns. So you have anti-spam filters. Here you can say which type of comments you consider spam or not spam. The first option is probably the one you already use in your general discussion settings. If you've approved a comment of someone, then you consider this is a commenter you trust. So you don't have to review every comment. The next one is you can trust a commenter with their gravatar. So you say, if someone is using an email address and this email address has a valid gravatar image, it's probably not just a random generated email. So in order to get a gravatar email address, you have to register on gravatar.com. You have to verify your email address. You have to upload an image. So there's some work you have to do. So it's not just a bot randomly generating an email address. This comes with a privacy notice, because if you check on Gravatar, if a commenter's email address has an image, you send an information about that email address to Gravatar. It's just a hashed value of the email address, but still you send some data out to another server, which we consider a privacy issue. So there is a notice, you can read all about what that means. So when you click on the link, you have the documentation, and there you can see what's the potential privacy issue. And then you can decide if you want to still use it or you want to add something to your privacy page. So people can know, okay, if I activate that option, what does it mean in terms of privacy? Then you also can consider the time of comments. You can check for BB code, which is they look like shortcodes, but they are, I would say, a pseudo HTML markup language that is used in forum software to add links and images and things like that. And many spam bots, they really don't care about if your website is a blog or a WordPress site or a Drupal site or BB codes supporting forum. They just post spam on whichever form they find on the internet. So BB code is a really clear indication that this comment is spam, because no human user would use BB code on a WordPress website in a comment. You can use a regular expression hook. By default, we have some regular expressions in place to catch some of the typical patterns of spam, but there are also filters where you can extend those regular expressions. So if you are a developer and you know how to use filters and regular expressions, you can fine-tune it. And this also comes handy with the next options. You look in the local spam database. Because we don't use a spam database like Akismet, you can only check the comment against your own entries. So it's best not to remove the comments in the spam folder, but keep them there. So any new comments can be checked against the local spam database. And this is also perfect when you see you have lots of spams coming through. Then having those spam comments still in your database, you can check, okay, is there a pattern I can see? And am I able to write a regular expression against that pattern so I can I can make sure that they are also considered spam. Then you can block comments from a specific country or in a certain language. And in order to do that, you also have to use an external service to know, okay, where is this comment coming from? So with the specific country, you usually just do a reverse proxy of the IP address, and then you can guess, okay, where's this IP coming from? And with the language, there is a service run by the Pluginkollektiv. So we have a server with an open source database on languages. So you can send in a string, and the engine is guessing which language that comment is written in. This is sometimes a bit tricky because, I mean, I have a WordPress website that is bilingual in English and German, but even on my my German part of the website, some people comment in English, or on my English part of the website, people comment in German. Or when you write about technical stuff, every second word is in English because most technical terms are English, and then you might end up having a comment written in German considered being English because there are so many terms that make the whole comment seem English. So this is not a very strict black and white decision, and this is also why it's not activated by default. After the filters, you can say what should we do with comments. You can mark them as spam and not delete them. This is the recommendation, because only when you use that setting you get your local spam database. Otherwise you instantly delete the comment, so there's no chance for the local spam database to use those comments. Then you can get notified by email every time you get a spam comment. I would not recommend to have that setting activated unless you really get very few comments and you have lots of false positives. Then you might want to try it out. Or maybe when you implement one of the new filters and you want to make sure that not too many good comments get considered spam. So you might want to turn that option off when you use your website after checking the new filters. Then you can also say that existing spam should be deleted after a certain amount of time. So let's say you keep them as spam, you don't delete them, but you don't want to waste too much storage in your database. Let's say you get 20,000 spam comments per day, then you probably want to delete some of them after some time. So there's an option to say, okay, delete some comments after some time. You can also say, I want to limit approval to comments or pings. So you can say, okay, I only accept comments, I never accept pings. And then you can also say, I want to immediately delete spams when a specific spam reason is hit. So let's say you have the honeypot filter kicks in. So there's a hidden input field in the comment, and when a bot fills out that hidden input field, this is a very good signal that this is a spam comment. So you can say, okay, if they hit the honeypot, then delete them. And if they hit the regular expression, delete them right away. So you can say, if those reasons are hit, just delete those comments, don't store it in the local database. So for example, a BB code filter is a very good indication that this is spam, and you don't have to keep them in the local spam database, because anytime they use BB code, it's totally clear that it's spam, and there's probably never an issue where someone is posting a valid comment using BB code. Unless they don't see that you are using a WordPress website. I once had a very angry comment from a user telling me I cannot write under the comment fields which HTML elements you can use in the comments. I must also say which BB codes they can use. And I was telling, this is not a forum, this is a WordPress website, and you cannot use BB code, you can only use HTML. And the last option is about deleting all the data when you uninstall Antispam Bee. Many plugins, when you remove the plugin, so you deactivate and remove the plugin, they still keep some data in the database. So they might have created their own tables, they might have stored options in the options table, and when you deactivate and uninstall those plugins, all the data remains in the database. And with that option, you can make sure if I deactivate and uninstall Antispam Bee, all those tables and comments and everything is going to be removed. The next one is about the widget you saw on the dashboard. So if you want to see a dashboard widget, you can always turn it off and on, like with any widget on the dashboard. But this is just to say, okay, I want really to generate that number. And yeah, then you have some options to don't check trackbacks and pingbacks. And you can also say that you want to check comments made on pages other than the posts page. So usually on a WordPress website, you have comments only on posts and pages, but you can also have a comments form on archive pages, like on tags and categories. You can have them on archive pages of products if you have a WooCommerce shop or something like this. So with this option, you can say check comments no matter where they're coming from, not only from posts and pages. And that's basically it. So in best terms, you just install Antispam Bee and you don't have to configure a lot. The default settings are well thought of. So you just install it and hopefully comment spam is gone. I have some websites I don't really actively use, but I have the plugin installed because even though I have never shared the domain with anyone, I still get spam. And so you see, you just get spam no matter if you have the domain linked somewhere or not. I don't know how spam bots find your website if you don't share the link anywhere, but they'll find it. So this is really a recommendation if you care about privacy and you don't want to use Akismet because of the GDPR issues. I would recommend trying Antispam Bee. The next one is called Statify. And Statify is a really, really simple statistics plugin. It's by default not using any cookies, no external server. It's just storing the page hits on your website in your WordPress database. This is all you get when you install Statify by default. You just have a dashboard widget with the number of hits per day and the top referrers and the top targets. That's really it. So if you don't need something like Matomo or Google Analytics, where you see, okay, which device are they using, which desktop resolution they have, which country are they coming from, and all of those things. You just want to see which are my most clicked pages and where are most people coming from. Statify is really all you need. So if you don't care about all the other metrics, Statify is all you need. There are some additions to the Statify. There's a plugin called Statify Extended Evaluation. This is not a plugin built by the Pluginkollektiv, but as you can see, there's more data. So you see a graph of like your most popular content. You can also filter them by post type. So in this case, you see the website of a podcast I'm co-hosting. And here you can see of the post type episodes, which episode has the highest number of hits and things like that. You can see a monthly and yearly view. On this website, I just installed it a couple of days ago, so there's not too much data yet. But you can really see a bit more about the numbers. It's using the same data Statify is storing in the database. So it's not adding additional data, it's just interpreting the data in a different way. So this is a plugin I can also recommend if you just need some really simple statistics. And you don't even have to use a cookie banner or something like this. And also the settings of the plugins are quite simple. It's not as many as with Antispam Bee. You set the period of data saving. So you can even say, I don't want to keep data from like a whole year or like from the time I started the blog because of privacy reasons. I just need to know the numbers of the last 14 days. So you can say after 14 days, just remove everything. You can choose different tracking methods. The default tracking method is done by PHP. The other ones are are very useful when you have an AMP plugin installed, because then the request is not hitting your server and the PHP part cannot count the page view. So then you just use a JavaScript-based targeting tracking method, so you can also count those page views done on AMP sites or similar. You can configure the dashboard widget in a bit. So how many days should I see the number of entries in the top list under the widget on the left side? You can say only the tops of today should be shown, things like that. So you can see it's really easy. And the last one is not to logged in users, which probably is an option you always use. You don't want to track your editors or admins in your website, just external user. And yes, you have something like a WordPress site where everyone is logged in and you want to see, okay, which internal sites of the WordPress installation are users clicking on. Or if you have a WooCommerce shop and users might be logged in because they want to see their last orders and things like that, then you would also want to track login users. But for a normal websites where you don't have a login for visitors, you don't need to log the users, and probably you don't want to, because otherwise you have statistics that don't really match your viewer statistics. Okay. And this is a bit of a presentation of the 3 most used plugins. Two of the most used plugins. There's another, it's called Cachify. This is a bit too complex to present right now, because Cachify is a really simple caching plugin. And there are tons of options. So you can say where to store the cache, which pages to cache, how to invalidate caches and things like that. And many of you who use caching plugins probably know that caching is not a very simple thing to do. But Cachify is a very simple plugin to use for that purpose, because it doesn't offer all the options you have and at what is it, W3 total cache or things like that, or Rocket Cache or things like that. So it's really simple. Like all of the plugins, it's the bare minimum you need for caching or for statistics or things like that. So it might not be as performant or as down to the byte in caching, but for users who don't really know too much about the technical implications of caching, Cachify is a plugin you can just try out, and your website will be a lot faster just by using a simple plugin. The next one is Crazy Lazy. It's the one plugin I mainly maintain, which somehow is a bit outdated now with WordPress 5.5, because now we have the browser native lazy loading attributes added to images. So you might not need to have a lazy loading plugin additionally, unless you have lots of users with older browsers who don't support the native lazy loading feature. But this is probably one of the plugins at one point we would abandon, because not too many users are still using old browsers who don't support the lazy loading feature. The next one is called Snitch, and it's a monitoring tool to check which connection your WordPress website is doing to other hosts. So if you have something like Akismet installed, for example, you would see all the requests of comments that are checked against the Akismet database or things like that, or the updates check if there are plugin updates of your free themes or your premium themes stored somewhere else. So it's really a tool that will tell you which connections to another service your website is doing, and then you might be able to uninstall some of the plugins or block some of the requests, because you don't want to hurt your GDPR privacy issues with those external requests. The blacklist updater or blocklist updater is a plugin that is updating the blacklist inside of the WordPress core. So there's I don't know exactly where it is. I think it's an option, and this is using a global list hosted on GitHub, which the community is adding entries to, and it's just updating the WordPress internal block list. The checksum verifier, as I said, is a plugin to check all the files in your WordPress installation if they verify against the checksum the WordPress project is offering. The next one, save post check links, is a very handy one. I mean, now with the block editor, it's not that important, but earlier in the classic editor, sometimes by accident you hit publish before you really finished your blog post. And this plugin was just adding another checkbox. You have to say, yes, I really want to publish that blog post or that page. So it was like a double check if you really want to say, okay, I want to publish this, this page or post. Now with the blog editor, by default, you have that second button you have to click. On that second screen, you can say, I don't want to see that second button ever again. But before you publish something with the blog editor, you are asked again, are you sure you really want to publish that page or post? So this is also a plugin. If the classic editor is not used anymore, this probably is also abandoned. So some of the 15 plugins we don't maintain anymore because they got deprecated, or you don't really need them anymore because they are now included in core. And the more important plugins, they probably still be maintained for quite a long time, like Antispam Bee. Okay, I see I have some questions in the chat. Okay, let's see. Okay, there's a question about the checksums. When I install a plugin, core tells me that there's no checksum. What's it about? I can't really answer that question because I'm not really into how the checksum verification works. I can see it when I install plugins that some AJAX requests are made against the plugin directory. And I've also seen that sometimes this check fails, but I've never seen an error message in the backend telling me that the checksum was not able to be verified. Maybe someone else knows that.
That was my question, Bernhard.
Okay.
When I do a plugin update or a WordPress update, it says the checksum could not be verified because one wasn't provided, but that's nothing to do with your checksum plugin. It's just WordPress core functionality.
Yes. So this is something that WordPress introduced, I think last year, where when you download a file from the WordPress plugin directory or theme directory, they download a zip file. And for that zip file, they have a checksum. So they check against the checksum of that zip file before they unzip and install the plugin theme or what else. But the checksum verifier checks the PHP and JavaScript files on your web host if they still verify against the checksum the WordPress project is providing.
Right.
And there's a question, is this plugin, do the plugins work with different languages? Yes, they do, because they are all built by the German community. They are fully internationalized. They are not translated in too many languages. I see, yes, 23 including Russian, because Sergei Müller, I don't know if he is Russian or just has Russian parents. This is why most of the plugins, unless some time ago, were totally translated into Russian. So they are all fully translatable, and you can translate them in any language you want. This is an example for Antispam Bee. Here you can see there's quite a lot of languages which are at 100%. So yes, you can totally use them with other languages. And many of them don't really have any strings in the front end. So Antispam Bee is just adding a hidden input field to the front end. So a visitor of your website would never see that you're using Antispam Bee. It's only the settings pages. They should be translated so users who are not native to English, they should be able to know what the settings are there for. Unfortunately, the documentation we only have in English and German. If anyone wants to contribute the documentation in another language, feel free to do so. This is also one of the parts where the getting involved on the website, you can see where to help. So there's development. So when you find a bug, you can report them on GitHub. All the plugins are on GitHub. Some of them are not in the theme, in the plugin directory, because they're very niche and very technical, and they would just not be of use for some of the users. So if they just install it through the plugin directory, they just wouldn't do anything. So they really need to know how to use them. But if you want to translate plugins or add documentations, this is a great way to help. What else? Okay, there's a question about usually statistics inside the database is too big. And I advise people to use search engine counters to measure whatever they want. Yes and no. I mean, it depends a bit on the amount of data you are storing. As you can see with Statify, you can say, okay, I want to delete everything that's older than 14 days. So it's not a whole lot of data in the database anyway. And as you can see, I have, what is it, like 348. The max was 448 per day. Let's say it's even 1,000. And in 2 weeks of time, that would be 14,000 rows in a database table. And the database table is really small. It's not like hundreds of columns. And like 14,000 lines in a database is not really a lot. I've seen statistic tables with 15 million lines in a table, and they were still fast enough to produce a stat like this, because a statistics table is usually a table where just put data in. You don't load that data every time you load a website on your WordPress installation. You just need that data to produce a graph like this. And this graph is not produced live. You have to hit refresh. There's a cron job producing that statistics. I don't know, every 2 or 12 hours. I don't know exactly how often it's refreshed, but even if you're in the back end and you log in, it's not slowing down your website a whole lot. But yeah, if you keep the data of Statify without deleting it, and you've run a website for 10 years and you have like 10,000 visitors per day, then your database table might grow a bit. But even then, I wouldn't say it's a huge issue unless you have some limitations on your hosting, on how big your database can be. I also have a question if Cachify is working on WooCommerce sites. To be honest, I cannot answer the question because I don't use Cachify myself on my blog. And I also don't have any WooCommerce sites I use, or I don't know a website of a client using WooCommerce in combination with Cachify. Maybe, I think Robert joined, maybe he can answer that question because he's more into WooCommerce, but yeah, I don't really know. But caching with WooCommerce is always something you really have to test a lot, because there can be things going wrong.
Robert, are you able to take that question? He may not have been connected yet.
Okay, no problem.
Maybe
that one. Okay. I cannot answer that because we don't use caching that's on the same environment as the WordPress.
Okay, so you use a server-side caching.
So we use a caching before the server. So like Varnish or like things in front of the server, not on the same environment.
Yeah, I mean, for a large WooCommerce website, that probably makes a lot more sense. And those specific server-side caching engines, they know how to handle shopping carts and things like that with authenticated users. Many of the caching plugins, they deactivate themselves when they recognize that someone is logged in. but I'm not really an expert into WooCommerce and Cachify, so I cannot answer if it's working or not. And then there's a follow-up question about caching plugins. Is there a difference between caching plugins? Which one is the best one? This is really hard to answer because caching is a very broad topic, and Cachify specifically is doing full site caching. So every time you visit a page on WordPress, like when I visit the homepage, it's generating the menu, the blog posts, the sidebars, the footer, all those things are generated using PHP. And this is using memory and CPU, processing time, and all of that. And that takes some time. And the idea of Cachify and many other caching plugins is to store a copy of that rendered website once someone has opened the website, like this specific homepage, for example. And then the next visitor will just get this cached static version of the website. This is one aspect of caching, but there are many, many other things. You can cache a database request. Let's say you always want to generate the data dynamically, but you don't want to load the data from the database every time live. So let's say with the example of the dashboard, you don't need to see the exact number of page views right now. It's okay if those numbers are 10 minutes old. Let's hit refresh. Maybe I get some other numbers now. Yeah, see, it's 2 page views more. I wouldn't say in those 15 seconds after I switched to the dashboard, 2 people visited a page. This is probably because I was not getting the live number. But usually it's not that important that you always have the very last second live number of something. And so this is another aspect. You cache database requests, you cache aggregated numbers, things like that. This is another aspect. And some of the bigger caching plugins, they don't only do static page caching, they also do database caching, caching of CSS and JavaScript files. They minify JavaScript files into one file and CSS files into one file, which was very common some years ago. Now with HTTP2 and HTTP3 as protocols, it's not as important as in the past. But this is the big difference between caching plugins and why some of the caching plugins are faster than other caching plugins and some reduce the bandwidth more than other plugins. And it's also a thing, what's the bottleneck? Is it the time a website needs to load? Is it the amount of data you send from your server to your users? Is it the amount of users visiting your website simultaneously, or is it the data that a single user is transferring? Let's say you have a podcast, and for our podcast, we host the audio files on the website itself, which is totally fine with some 400 visitors a day. But if we have 400,000 visitors a day, we would not host the audio files on our website because the web server would just be too slow to transfer all those files. Especially when we publish a new episode, everyone is downloading the episode within maybe 2 days. So in those 2 days, the server is under heavy load. So in this case, we would use a content delivery network and having the episodes on another server, and we just like embed them on our website. This is also a strategy where you say, okay, my web server can only handle this amount of requests, and those heavy things like videos, audio files, images, we offload to another server. And then we don't need to cache them because those services will handle this. So caching and performance is really a very broad issue. And if you have a small website, which is slow because you use an old page builder with 5 extra plugins to that page builder to make it compatible with a slider and other things, then the page rendering time might be very slow. And in this case, a simple thing like Cachify could be everything you need, because you just want to decrease the time the initial page rendering takes. I hope that helps a bit about caching.
That's a very good explanation of caching. Thank you for doing that. Does anybody else have any more more questions?
Yeah, I do. Antispam Bee, you said it's only there for checking comments.
Yes.
How easy would it be to make it check contact forms?
Not very easy. We've discussed it briefly, but the problem is there's only one common form in WordPress core, but there's hundreds of like contact form plugins out there, and every contact form plugin is building their forms in a different way. So for comment spam, we can just use a simple filter from WordPress core to make it happen. And with all the common plugins out there, we probably had to implement hundreds of different filters and different ways to filter out spam. And also a content form, a comment form only has a name, an email address, and a message, but a contact form can have dozens of fields.
Yeah.
And which of those fields would you consider into checking for potential spam? Just
I have an example where my contact form is basically name, email, and content. And I've used the Kismet service to basically say, here's a comment, check that, and if it comes back as spam, then I don't submit the contact form. And you could basically call Antispam Bee's checking to do the same sort of thing.
Yeah.
Rather than being filtered.
Yeah, but I'm also quite sure that Akismet cannot check any contact forms data that's submitted. They probably work with some of the contact form plugins, but not with all of them, because they all work in a very different way. And some of the contact forms, they have an anti-spam mechanism themselves. Like, for example, the premium plugin Gravity Forms, there is a honeypot option you can activate with every form. If you use Contact Form 7, which is quite popular, there's a Contact Form 7 honeypot plugin, and you install that plugin, and then you add some additional fields to your form. Let's say, Herb, you don't ask for a phone number, but then you would add a honeypot field asking for a phone number. And then the bot thinks, okay, this is a required field, and just inputs a random phone number. And then you know, okay, this is a spam bot because no normal user is seeing the phone number. And this is why I know this is a spam bot. So there is for many of the well-known contact form plugins, there are some additional plugins to block spam, or a spam blocking option is bundled within the contact form. And this is why with Antispam Bee, we just focus on common spam and not on contact forms, because it's a very broad subject.
Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you to Bernhard, because that really was very helpful in terms of setting up. I've been trying to follow on some of those things on installations, and because it is recorded, it means that you can actually watch it and set up these plugins, have a go. The GDPR issues, particularly if you are doing websites for charity in the UK, are really important, and encourage you to have a look at that. Antispam Bee is really easy to set up, and I find it personally easier to use than Akismet, and for GDPR considerations too. But it's just another example of how the community comes together to preserve, develop, take forward, and make available so many different things and assistance. And I think for that, we're very grateful to Pluginkollektiv and other people. There are lots of opportunities to get involved in either this or one of the contributing teams that exist within the Make WordPress project. So if you are interested in getting involved, writing documentation, using some of these and helping them in the support forums, then do get in touch, and we'll pass that on to Bernhard and the team at the Pluginkollektiv, and I'm sure they'll be really pleased to introduce you to what they're doing. The same as if you're wanting to contribute to WordPress in in any way and are not sure how to do so already, then we have lots of onboarding information that's available. Olga, who is on this call, is very involved with doing translations of onboarding information, and we're always pleased to be able to show people a bit more about that. So just take a moment to say thank you so much to Bernhard and for stepping at the last minute and doing this presentation for us.
Yeah, thanks.
Yes.
Just one last thing. For some of the plugins, we have some documentation. I just realized that somehow on the English side, we show the German screenshots, which is not ideal. But especially for Antispam Bee, there's a whole lot of documentation. Some of those sections are linked from within the settings page, like all the privacy related parts, but also every options is briefly explains what they do, how they like block things or how they work. And so you get a better idea if you want to activate those settings or how would you want to like tweak those settings. And hopefully we can fix those German screenshots quickly.
That'd be great.
We have not documented all of the plugins because some of the plugins, they just don't have a settings page. Like Crazy Lazy, I really like plugins that don't need any settings page. With Crazy Lazy, you just install it, activate it, and it's working in the back. Like the lazy loading feature of Core. There are 2 filters you can use if you want to tweak something, but for most users, you just install them and they work, and you don't have to set anything. So yeah, some of the plugins, they don't have a documentation because there's nothing to document really.
And the Crazy Lazy, I've used it with a lot of sites where people have inexperienced users, and it does save an awful lot of time in terms of dealing with their pictures than other. And
I once had the request to optimize a homepage of a website, and the homepage was 40 megabyte in size with 38 megabytes just images. It was like a one-pager basically with many accordions and things like that and tab navigation. So everything of the website was just on the front page. And if you don't have something like Crazy Lazy or the new lazy loading of Core, every single image on the front page will be loaded if you load the homepage, even if you don't open the accordion or you don't go to the tab with all the images. And if you're on a mobile phone and you have like 40 megabytes of your precious, I don't know, 2 gigabytes a month taken away, that's really not very nice to your visitors.
Definitely. So please have a look at the plugins. If you've got any more questions, we will take them and send them to the team. And it's a good opportunity to try something new and hopefully a bit easier to put in. Thank you for sharing that and your screens and doing that walkthrough, Bernhard. It was very, very helpful.
There's another question from Olga.
I think that goes back to the contact form question. I'd say it's technically possible, yes, but we just don't focus on contact forms as of now. Maybe we'll add that in the future, but for right now, we don't want to support contact forms. And
Olga, you can always join the Pluginkollektiv too. And I went to WordCamp Stuttgart and found that I joined the Pluginkollektiv. I'm not quite sure how I managed that, and been helping them with some of the things. So there are opportunities, and we can put you in touch with the right people. So
I mean, maybe you want to check the Russian translations, because I don't think that Sergey is actively maintaining them, so there might be some strings missing. Yeah.
A good way to start. Yeah. And I think she speaks German too, so that'd be another helpful way forward.
Yeah, but the base string is English, so it's easy.
Which is great. And Herb, could I have the other slides back?
You could. I'm going to start sharing.
Yep.
What can you see? Oh, I've got to pick something first. Right, where would you like to go?
To the screen that talked about the next event, I think.
That one?
That is it. Thank you very much.
That one?
Oh, it's
Not that one.
not that one.
No. Well, the next event is that one. What's new in WordPress 5.5?
Yep. Thank you. So we've been talking about lazy loading, and next month we will be talking more about lazy loading and telling you all about the wonderful things that are in WordPress 5.5. And the slides keep moving. But we'll be walking you through a bit more about the features and how you can use them. We'll also be looking at how you can start putting together your ideas for what you'd like to be in 5.6. We will share a tweet with after this event about the 5.6 wish list. If you haven't already contributed to that, it's a great time to do it. They really want to know. 5.6 kicks off in about 35 minutes in terms of the release work. And if you've never followed a release before and you'd like to do so, then join Dev Chat on the core channel of Make WordPress Slack. And it's every Wednesday at 9 o'clock our time, BST, or Irish Standard Time if you're in Ireland. And it's a great way just to be able to understand what goes into release and to be involved in what happens and getting your things forward. Now, Herb managed to prove between this meeting last time and the launch of 5.5 that if you raise an issue, it can get dealt with. And in fact, you had 2 successes, Herb, didn't you?
Did I?
So you said that, and Mark also, who was on this call last month, had a success with having something changed.
All right. Okay. Yeah. So one of them was the up and down arrows on moving blocks, and it was simply a case of the arrows were overlapping. So if you hovered over the up arrow, there wasn't as much space as if you hovered over the down arrow. So that was some success. Didn't have any success with the comments about the header icon no longer showing an H, but shows a funny shape.
So maybe we could share that with the team and the Slack, and we can get people to encourage that to be moved along.
Well, it's probably a bit late now.
It could always go into the next one.
Don't think they'll change it back for some reason. I think they've decided that's the design. We're going to be like that.
It's still always important to give feedback and explanations. It is a community project, and things do get changed as a result. So we have Christopher, who's on the joined us today, and and Olga are 2 of the people who are on the 5.5 Q&A team, and Robert also is looking at who else is here. In fact, quite a lot of people. We have Larissa who was here. I think her connection just dropped off. Robert, Chris, and Olga. So it is possible to be involved. What the team is doing is trying to answer difficult questions, trying to look at where the questions are coming in and find the solutions so that people can actually have a little bit easier time when they're looking at a new release. And we can continue to help WordPress grow, which I think is now at 38% of all websites. In October, we have Belinda Musto coming to talk to us about the Gutenberg block editor and how to use it a bit more. We're hoping we have a presentation by Joe Simpson Jr. at WP Plugin in November, but that is a TBC, so I need to get Herb to change that to a TBC until we can get that confirmed. We've got a seasonal quiz and a social on the 16th of December. But in the meantime, if you would like to share, host, or talk about a particular thing in WordPress that you can do, then we would love to hear from you. We have lightning talks available for 2021, and we'd love to fill those slots of people who are here. So if you're on this Zoom call tonight and you can present something that would help other people, then please do consider it. Talk to us in the Pompey Slack, on the UK Slack, message us on Twitter, or talk to us on Meetup. We really would like to make this as much as possible about the things that you want to talk about. On Friday last week, WordPress also launched the new online event platform. This is a soft launch, and there will be lots of things available for Meetups events in the future, which will include video tutorials where Meetups will be asked to run discussion groups around this. So do have a look at Learn WordPress and look at the upcoming talks and presentations. It is open to anyone to submit a workshop. So if you fancy doing that as a recorded item, then do put your name forward. And again, if you want some help, talk to us on the Pompey channel. So I'll hand back to Herb, and he can talk to us about our wonderful sponsors.
Oh, right. Our wonderful sponsors being Red IT, who is here somewhere. Scott, he's silent and not videoed. Who has been sponsoring us ever since we restarted back in January 2018, and Red IT will give you a discount for your hosting if you fill in WP Pompey or something when you check out, when you order hosting or domains. And 34SP, who have been sponsoring us and hopefully will continue to sponsor us in the future, but we're not quite sure exactly how they're doing that now because we're not using their money for pizzas or refreshments. So we might just pay that to somebody else. And that's about it. Unless you want to find out about that.
Some WordPress trivia.
Yeah, WordPress 5.5 downloaded 6.3 million times by this morning. And there's something that Bernhard's particularly pleased about in the middle. There's a capital P in WordPress. As you can see, the website was called Capital P Podcast.
Yeah. I mean, funny enough, it's a podcast primarily for beginners. So it's not a developer podcast. But probably most of you don't know, there's a function in WordPress core. It's called capital P dang it. And it would make sure that every time you write WordPress, not with a capitalized P, in your content of a blog post, it would just capitalize the P's for you. And I always had the idea to have a podcast with that name. And then I ended up having a podcast with Maya for beginners. And I'm sure most of them don't get the joke, but also because we are in the capital of Germany, in Berlin, that also was like a good connection to that name.
Is your podcast in German?
Yes, it's in German.
So we'll look forward to an English version of that. And
I mean,
it's something
there are hundreds of English-speaking podcasts, and there's just a handful of German. Not even a handful. Like one really active one, Robert is hosting. We haven't published an episode since December, I think. I have 3 on hold. They are like 99.9% finished. But just like the publish button is not finished yet. So there are still some small things. And the other German podcasts, some of them are like starting again soon, but yeah, it's not too many German speaking. And for those who don't speak English well enough, having something in German is quite nice.
Definitely.
Is the December meeting going to be virtual?
Yes.
Yes.
Are there any plans to have physical meetings, or is that?
Not in 2020.
Who does that depend on? Does it depend on us or the government?
It's a bit of both. It's meeting the government regulations, but it's also meeting the venue regulations. And WordPress community has recommended against any more in-person meetings this year.
Right. And I have a question for Bernhard. Who does your graphic design? Who does your graphic design? The logo.
What graphic design do you mean?
The logos.
They were all done by Sergey.
All right.
Yeah,
They're quite old.
Yeah, I think they are very nice. I think all of my plugins I have in the directory, they don't have any logos. I'm not a graphic designer, I'm just a developer, and I think not a single one has a logo or a header image or something. It's just...
But you said he gave up, was it 20 years ago?
No. I mean, WordPress was not existing 20 years ago.
No, Sergey, the man who...
And I think it was in 2015, so 5 years ago. Yeah. WordPress is just around for a bit more than 17 years, so. Yep. And in the first editions of WordPress, there were no plugins.
When did Hello Dolly come in then?
I don't know exactly. I started with 2.7.3, I think.
Right.
But I don't know if plugins were available since 1 point something or 2 point something. I guess Robert knows or has an idea.
You
But
better find an answer.
1.5 exactly. I think 1.5 or 1.2 or something. That before that was the hack PHP. So yeah, it's a long time ago.
No, maybe that'd be a question in the quiz.
So thank you everybody for joining us for another WordPress Pompey, and we do hope that you'll come again and tell your friends about it. We may not be able to meet in person, but we are going to keep trying to keep this community connected and to welcome our international regulars as well, because I think we've seen them at most events now for some time. So do keep in contact on the Slack, use our Twitter, and do show appreciation for our speaker tonight on our Twitter account too.
And now.
So,
I think you have to put my name into the chat, because it's easy to say, but my handle on Twitter, but for English speakers, it would be the wrong handle.
Yep, I'm just going to try and do that now. I presume it's the same as your Slack name, isn't it? I'm sure it is. I just haven't got...
No.
Okay, so I need to look it up then, because I just
posted it.
You posted it, okay.
Yeah.
Ah, cool. So yeah, please do tell the world how much you enjoyed WordPress Pompey, and that they want to come up and do and join, find out more about 5.5 and 5.6 and everything else that's happening. And if you've got any questions that you think would be good to have in our Q&A for 5.5, please do reach out to myself or to Olga, and we'll be pleased to look at those. And also, if you want to come and help, we are now recruiting for the 5.6 Q&A working group. So we'd love to have everybody who is on this call involved, if you would like to be, particularly if you're a developer, because it really does help to understand the processes. So, or to work on specific aspects of what we're doing. So I think unless Drew has anything else he'd like to add.
No, just good to see everybody. Great talk again tonight. Thank you.
Scott? I take it his mic's not connected yet. So all that remains to say is have a good journey within your house. And we will see you again in September. So thank you for joining us, and good night.
Take care, everyone.
Bye.
So, have a nice evening. Bye.
I'm trying to press the stop recording button.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yes, we can hear you now.
They're gone.
Typical. Now everybody's gone.
Right, I'm going to press stop recording though, unless there's something particularly important you want to have recorded.